Good morning. Welcome to H3 TV, where we meet every week to share how do we stay hopeful, healthy, and happy through the storms, disruptions, challenges, and changes in our life. Unfortunately, my guest was not able to make it this morning, and I am a believer of the show must go on. And when I say I'm going to do something, I do something. So today, I'm going to interview myself. Who am I, and what do I do? Well, I am a professional speaker, an award winning author, getting ready to release my eighth book. I tried to do a book a year every year since I started speaking. And in 2020, I took the year off. So I took the year off in 2020, but my goal is to continue to write a book a year. I have 4 books in the percolator and one that's being formatted and will be released that was inspired by Hurricane Ian. I love my fruit book series, which are simple, short books, and I love to show people how to write those books with a lesson and value in them, but a great tool for giving away to market or to teach other people. I'm actually going to do a retreat to teach other women how to do that in a weekend, how to write a book, but it has to have value. It's not just throwing it together, and how to produce it so that you have something you can carry with you and tell a little bit about your beliefs and your values and what you teach. So yes, I am a Hall of Fame speaker in Minnesota, a CSP, which is a certified speaking professional, and a certified virtual presenter, a certified life coach and wellness coach. I owned gyms for 12 years. And an award-winning author. So that's who I am and what I do. What do I consider a storm or disruption? Well, I think it's anything that takes you out of your regular path or rhythm of life. And so for me, that storm or disruption can come up at any time. And sometimes we choose them, like to switch jobs, to move to a new place, to make new friends. Sometimes there is disruption or challenge in that. And other times they come at us from a death to a diagnosis, to a takeover, to a merger, to being laid off, to a downturn in the market. For me, my videos, this program, H3 TV, was inspired by COVID. And my newest book, Choose to Soar, was inspired by the hurricane hitting our home. And I think that sometimes disruption happens and we just are like, just kind of sucker punched is how I think of it. Like it knocks the wind out of your lungs. And if you've ever played sport and got the wind knocked out of you, for a moment, you have to stop and you have to just be still. Like, oh, okay, that happened. And so that's what I'm trying to encourage and teach people is when those challenges come up to you, how do you face them and move on? And so that's my storm that I think about right now is hurricane. I am still displaced, which I know confuses many people. So we live in the villages. We do have a home in the villages. I consider it our safe home, but it's very bare in here. We don't have any pictures of our family or friends. And we use it as a rental property during the snowbird season. Our condo, which is our home on the Fort Myers beach that was hit by the hurricane, 2 of the floors have been put back and 3 of the walls, but all the windows and doors are damaged. The lanai is still mangled, pulled down and pulled in from each side. We did have the screens put back in. And the whole property, really the whole island, still looks like a bomb went off. Like there's doors hanging and walls hanging, and where we look out, you see just half buildings and you hear lots of loud noises. So it's a very hard place to live. Very disruptive still, but also to think and work. So for me that does virtual presentations and does a lot of writing and thinking, I need a calm environment to be able to focus and move forward. It's also a very depressing place because it's very sad looking out. It's not restored. It is not the beautiful beach and island that we dreamed and lived in. Could we live there? Yes. But if it rains or the wind blows, dirt and water blows into our windows and doors because the seals are broken on all the doors and windows and insurance has not paid to start the restoration of the building or the property. So that's where we live. So that's been a very challenging storm. I've been through a lot of storms and disruptions in my life, but that has been an extremely challenging one. Feel free to ask questions or comments as I share with you today. How do I stay hopeful in the storm? I was just telling someone this morning, really my faith and my friends and my family. I consider them my friends too. But people and praise. So I think that it's really easy. And if I think about it enough, I can get really sad every day thinking about being so unsettled still. But I have a strong faith and I believe that God has good plans for me and that the future looks bright. And I have amazing people in my life, from my family to my friends, that pour into me, that believe in me, that encourage me, that listen to me, that walk with me, that share their stories, and we support each other and we celebrate each other. And so I'm so grateful for the community of people I have around me. So that really helps me stay hopeful. Staying healthy, I think, is more challenging than hopeful for me. I have an optimistic and positive attitude, but healthy's hard for a variety of reasons. For one thing, I think of health in 7 areas. So I think of your physical, mental, emotional, relational, career, financial, and spiritual. So spiritual is pretty good. Financial's challenging because it seems like we have more expenses than income. Lots of months since the hurricane hit. Career, I love what I do. I love who I do it for. I have amazing clients as audience members, as coaching clients. I love my clients and they just encourage me and believe in me and my good work. So that's amazing. I love my career. Relationships, I have great relationships with my family and friends. That's a very rewarding part. Um, mental for me is thinking about my thinking. So my brain, like, am I focusing on positive or negative? I read every day. I do Jim Quick's memory app to help my memory, because trauma triggers your memory to make it hard to think. So I really work on remembering and getting back to getting clear and calm. Even last night I had a nightmare again still about the hurricane, and the day we left, that Thursday morning, not the day we left the island, but the day we walked outside, the whole street was just covered, for those of us from the Midwest, like a big, huge snowstorm, except for it was sand and muck and dirt. And so you're like plowing through this kind of mucky sand. And then the next day, a snowplow, what looked like a snowplow, came out and literally made a path in the street where we could walk. It was the first day we couldn't even really walk through it. Why am I telling you that? Physical health. Good morning, Pamela. So, or yeah, mental health. So cognitively remembering things, right? And getting clear. So I read every day for 10 minutes. I do my devotional for 10 to 30 minutes every day. And then I'm doing Jim Quick's memory to keep my memory clear. And then emotional health. I'm really a believer that we should feel every emotion, from the good, the bad, to the ugly. And I allow myself to be sad without apology. I allow myself to acknowledge this is still really stressful for us. It doesn't mean I don't have good days or good moments or good times and make the best of the circumstance I'm in, but it does mean it's challenging, and I let myself feel that and acknowledge that. So my emotional health's pretty good. And I have great coaches and therapists and people around me that love on me. And so I am able to be refilled so I can go love on my audience and clients. And then physical health. So for my physical health, one of my challenges is I'm definitely a stress eater and I love sugar. And I know some people think, oh, that's bad. And I used to own gyms. How could I do that? But I let myself eat pretty much what I want. I try to control the portions a little bit better than I did when the storm first hit. But routine is huge for my physical health. Getting up and having prayer time, having reading time and focus time, and then moving my body. So luckily at the Villages, I've made a few friends and we walk pretty much every morning. I try to take Sundays off, but it doesn't work. 6:30 to 7:30 with our little dogs. And that's a beautiful time to move my body. I also still occasionally do Shelley's videos, get more fruits and veggies in our life and in our diet, more salads, which has been good. So taking care of that, but routine and movement really is part of my mental and emotional and spiritual health. And I miss the beach. We'll be going back to our condo next week. We try to go at least 1 week a month and kind of see what it's like there. Happy. How do I stay happy and humorous in this disruption? Well, I love to laugh. So I watch comedians, I watch magicians, I hang out with friends that we just literally laugh at ourselves mostly, not other people. We're just laugh at how dorky and goofy and silly we can be. So I look for it. I look for things to be happy and hopeful about. So that's a big part. What lessons did I learn from the storm? Whew, holy cow, from this major disruption of my life. Well, a huge lesson that I have learned over and over and over again, and I want to remind you, is things do not always work out as we plan, right? So I might think I have this plan for my life, which I really did. I had this 30-year vision of plan and living on the beach. And a big lesson is just to let go and to just be open to. And I remember when I walked the beach, especially in the beginning alone, and I told Greg this numerous times, that I kept feeling this knowing of like, I'm not going to be here long. Enjoy the moments. Savor the moments. They might not last that long. Savor the moments. And I know a lot of people go through life, and when bad things happen, someone dies or they get a divorce or get diagnosed or they lose a job, they're like, why me, God? But I always think, why me when I'm so blessed? Because I am super blessed. Even in the midst of tragedy and challenge and adversity that I've faced my whole life, I'm super blessed. So I never think, why me? Because who are we to think we deserve an easy, smooth life? Nowhere is that said. Nowhere is it say life is fair or that it's easy or that it's smooth or that what you pray for, you're going to get. And losing a friend a number of years ago, I've lost a lot of friends and family in my lifetime. I remember that healing came. She had colon cancer and she died. She was given 6 months to live. She lived over 3 years. But healing, I got to watch healing come to her relationship with her husband, her relationship with each of her kids, her relationship with herself, and how she talked to herself before she passed. So to me, she was fully healed. Not that she got to live and not that she didn't die young and all of those things, but she had healing in different ways. And so a big lesson I learned is to look for the good in the challenging and to allow space. Like I am producing this book or finish this book with my partner Rachel helps me write because I'm more of a verbal writer, and then we smooth it out and put it into words, and it's in the process of being formatted. The cover's picked, the writing is done, but it will be released soon. But in that, I thought about what are the lessons I want to teach people. And I love acronyms because I remember them and it helps you remember them. But I thought of storms. So a disruption can be a professional, personal, or a literal storm, but it's something that disrupts your pattern, your rhythm, your expectation of the future. Plus, less expectations, high hopes, but low expectations make life a lot easier. So the storm's acronym is S, stands for be still, silent, and sad. And it's about allowing yourself to be okay, not being okay, and allowing yourself space to say, this is really hard, this is really sad, and just being with that. The second one is sati, and it's time. As I speak to different audiences and different organizations, what I realize is that we're all on our own time frame, right? Like some people might, can't you be over that? You've been divorced for this long, or your husband died years ago, or your wife did this, or your company merged, or you need to get over it. Well, I don't think that's true. I think we don't get to tell anyone. For some of us, we might be able to move on quite quickly because we're prepared or we've planned, or that's just how our body and mind work. For others of us, it might be a really slow process. So tease about time, giving yourself grace and how long it takes you or how quickly you move on. I meet widows who say, I'm ready to start dating, but everyone's judging me. And I'm like, let them judge. If you're ready to move on, who says how long we have to grieve the loss of a friend, a job, a family member? We're all on our own journey. So T's about time. And O's about staying open, open to lessons, open to opportunities, open to observing what this experience, what this disruption has to teach us. R is about reliable relationships. I have so many amazing people that have come around me, prayed for me, poured into me, checked on me, sent me gifts or gift cards or money to help carry us in a time when literally we moved 5 times after the hurricane hit before we landed here, which is why we bought instead of rented, because we spent, I think, over $30,000 renting, which is just crazy, right? Like, as we're moving and we have down payments or damage deposits and we have 2 dogs, and it was just so challenging. So reliable people that not only support you mentally and emotionally and financially and physically, but that check in periodically and don't judge you for still being in the midst of your disruption or storm. So reliable relationships. And M is mindset and motivation. I am huge about protecting my mind. I don't go to scary movies. I don't watch news. And some people make fun of me. That is fine. For me, protecting my mindset so that I can stay motivated and motivate others is so important. Listening to uplifting things, watching funny things, being around positive people, talking positively to myself and about myself, how I look, how I show up, my gifts that I give the world. So how is your mindset and what do you do to protect it, to stay motivated? And S is about soaring. And that really came to me because I meet so many people that say, I survived this and I survived that, and I'm swimming or I'm stuck. I'm in that hamster wheel of life. And I think that whatever you go through, whatever disruption you face professionally, personally, or literally, I think that you have a choice to soar above those circumstances, to live above the chances of your life or the circumstances. And I don't want people to just be stuck or sinking or exhausted swimming or surviving. I want them to soar above. And I think it takes strategy and planning in order to get to that soar above point in your life. So that is what those are some of the lessons. What do I wish I knew differently before a storm, before this hurricane, before this disruption, is that I wish I knew, and I will never ever tell anyone, I wish I knew to soar above. I wish I knew that hurricanes are very different than tornadoes. I wish I knew not to stay and that it would be so much more than water. Okay, my guest just showed up. So I think I'm going to let her jump in and answer some of these questions, and we will try to get through as many as we can. But that was my interview for today, and I always appreciate you listening and asking questions and comments. So let me welcome Kristi to the stage, and Pamela, yes, let's connect. All right, Kristi, welcome to the stage. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Annie?
I'm great. I started interviewing myself because I figured you got busy, which no worries. That happens. Life happens. We're going to just jump right in if that's okay, because I do have another meeting coming up right after. So tell us who you are, what you do, where you live. Tell us all about yourself.
Great. Well, my name is Kristi Casey. I am a creative strategist and a novelist, and I help people get unstuck. I love creating new worlds, and I love helping people see the possibilities that are beyond where they are right now.
Awesome. All right. And tell us, when you think of disruption or storm, what comes to mind? What do you visualize when you think of those words?
Opportunity.
Mm.
I think of opportunity because actually, and I do believe it's like the Chinese character for chaos and opportunity are the same. There is a feeling that when something is disrupted, that there's this grief, there's this loss. And yes, I think it's important to grieve for the person that you used to be or for the things that you thought were possible. However, if you get stuck in that situation, what you don't see is that life is nothing without change. Everything evolves. And the old calendars, and even calendars for religions like Judaism, are based off of cycles. And so you're never up for very long and you're never down for very long. And so if you learn how to ride those cycles and you think of things that happen to you as just things that happen, they're just facts. They are, just look for the lesson, then I think it makes those storms a lot easier to ride through.
100%. I love the word opportunity. Perfect, beautiful. And I also think I learned long ago, don't make your highs too high or your lows too low. And then you won't be as devastated or as excited. You'll just kind of stay, not that you don't want joy and sadness, but just in that realm that you're talking about. So what is a disruption?
I would add something though to that, because I do believe that as an artist, you live in that state where your highs are higher and your lows are lower than other people. And I would say that if that is your natural state, not to fight it, just learn how to live within that. There's a joy in that ebb and flow.
Yeah.
And I think if you try to contain those feelings and keep them artificially ceilinged or artificially basemented, then you're cutting yourself off from a lot of information that might be vital to what the lesson is or what the creation that wants to be birthed through you is. So that's what I would add to that. I don't know it's for everybody, but I do think that.
Yes, I was just reiterating what you kind of had said, and now you're changing it, which is totally fine. Like that's good. So what about you personally, a disruption or a storm? What's something that you've personally gone through?
Oh yeah. Well, my ex-husband, we had been together for about 20 years, and during the pandemic realized that we were on very different ends of the political spectrum, and in that kind of painful way that I think a lot of people discovered that they just couldn't have conversations with their loved ones anymore. Mm-hmm. There were no facts that we could agree on. There was no common ground, and it was ugly. The conversations were just ugly. And so after the insurrection on January 6th, I waited a couple of days because I was afraid of what he would say or was thinking about it.
Mhm.
And when we finally did talk, he was on the side that was denying that it happened, was saying that it had been staged by Antifa and all of these things. And so that was when we finally had our break. Like that was my last straw. And we ended up separating, and it made all sorts of different things possible for me. I was scared mostly because my daughter, every time she would hear us fight, would say, "You're not going to get divorced, are you? You're not going to get divorced." And like, any mom, you're like, no, no, no. It's just, we just fight. It's just,
Normal.
and I know. And so like leading up to that conversation I was going to have with him, I did kind of sit with my kid and say, "Hey, look, I'm thinking about asking him to leave just until after the inauguration, and because of be less fighting and da 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 da." And she's like, "I think that would be a good idea," because at the same time she was going through her own self-actualization journey, and she was in the process of figuring out how to come out to her parents and to be who she authentically was, which wasn't to be a she anymore. And it was and so it was just I was worried about how they would feel. And the first night that he was gone, my kid said to me, "Do you hear that?" And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Nothing." No heavy sighs of disappointment. No, "What are you watching?" No criticisms, no complaints, no, just silence. And it felt like a weight had been lifted off of us, this disapproval, this feeling like we had to walk around on eggshells all the time. And not having to support him also let me leave a job situation that was not a good one for
Yeah.
me, and allowed me to strike out on my own and publish my first book and do all sorts of things that would have been, maybe I would have gotten to them and it would have taken longer. Um, but it wouldn't have been as easy because I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own steam. I would have been having to go through this negotiation pattern and these straits of Charybdis to have to get to there.
Yeah. So it sounds like a communication breakdown, a collaboration of like we can respect each other and have different values broke down, and it didn't feel safe and peaceful in your home anymore. So in that disruption, that really, and again, I talk about, sometimes we're choosing it because it's the best choice. Sometimes it happens to us, and sometimes we choose it because it's like I want to live in peace and harmony, not only with myself but with those I love, and I want to make my home safe. And so when you were going through this and making this decision, which is a huge decision to make a big change, even if it's right, it's still huge and it changes things. How did you stay hopeful through that, Kristi? How did you stay hopeful when it did get hard, whether it was financially got hard or
Mhm.
changed, or like you had this new adventure, but now you didn't have somebody who you'd had for 20 years to process it with?
Yeah, so I really leaned on friends. There were friends that I'd had for 20 something years that I had fallen out of touch with because, like a lot of people who get married, I think your spouse becomes your best friend, and then you kind of let other relationships go a little bit. So, being able to connect with old friends, being able to um, think about who I was, because I think that's the other thing that happens in a divorce is that your personal view of yourself gets subsumed by this idea of you as part of a couple. And it takes some time to figure out who you are now
Yeah.
and what you need and what you need outside of that. So I spent a lot of time by myself because, of course, like every other weekend, I didn't have the kid to distract me. So I started to look for constructive things I could do that would keep me from just sitting around feeling bad. So
Yeah.
I had been an improviser for a while. And so I went to the local community center and I signed up to teach an improv class.
Oh, fun.
And I leaned on friends and said, "Hey, starting May 1st, I'll be available for this kind of work if anyone has anything available." And immediately a couple of people came forward, and it gave me enough money that I knew I was going to be okay through the summer. And so it was asking for help, reconnecting with friends, and finding constructive avenues for my energies and my time on nights. So my improv classes were Friday nights because Friday nights were the loneliest.
Mm.
So So just being really intentional about how to keep myself busy
Yeah.
in ways that feed me and put me in connection with other people
And you
and
put
give.
yourself out there. You said, hey, let me look. I always say, as a coach, I say, we assess to address. So you looked back at what are my giftings? Oh, improv. I love that. I could teach that. Like you reflected. I always say we reflect back, we don't stare back, and then we look forward, right? And so I want to know, how did you stay healthy? So I love that you decided, hey, I'm going to look back at some of my gifting. I'm going to figure out what's my loneliest night. I'm going to teach on it. Like you were very strategic in assessing so you could address, so you could move forward. So what were some tools to keep you healthy? Because even when we want a change, we still can feel unhealthy, whether it's physically, emotionally, financially, however you go through that, relationally. So how did you stay healthy as you went through this change?
Yeah, so I had a daily walk with my dog that I did. And then he passed away pretty soon after we separated. And so then I didn't have that. So that was, I started to, there have been a couple of years where I had really worked hard at, the workout videos and diet and all sorts of stuff. And I had hit kind of a plateau. And so I went ahead to the local gym and inquired about personal training sessions and worked with a trainer to kind of up my game and get me over that hump. And he gave me an eating plan that completely transformed what I thought was possible
Mhm.
and kept me healthy. And I had that morning, I started waking up at 4 o'clock and going and working out with him at 5,
Wow.
and that allowed me to work out and then come home and wake my child up and get them off to school. And so now all of a sudden I had these days where if I wanted to journal, I could journal. And I had this whole morning now that existed for me. Whereas before, I drag myself up, I'd immediately go into school duty, I'd like shake the sleep out of my eyes after I got them to the bus stop, and then I'd start my work, and I really started to think about how I wanted to pattern my day because now I was an independent consultant,
Yeah.
right? Now my schedule was my own. So what did I want my day to be like? And a friend of mine in Canada, her house had burned down, and she was one of the people that I'd really leaned on for support. And so while she was in this hotel room, we were talking a lot. And uh, one of the things she missed the most about her house was her hot tub. She would get in her hot tub every morning and have her morning hot tub and coffee.
Yeah.
And so I had a hot tub. Like our house, we had bought it because it had been somebody's second home, like a retirement place, and it had a hot tub and a sauna. And she's like, do me a favor, do your hot tub and coffee every morning. It will change your life. So I started adding that. Like I had my hot tub and coffee in the morning, and I had my workouts, and I had this. And so I had this whole way that I could gently enter my day after I had spent time in introspection and physical activity. So I checked in with my mind and my soul and my body. And then once I was centered, then I could start from a place where now I wasn't at anyone's beck and call. I was I was who I wanted to be, and I showed up when I wanted to show up.
And Kristi, what I love is a couple things. One thing reminded us that when we have one disruption, doesn't mean, okay, I have one, I'm going to wait till this one's all neatly packaged and calm again before I get another one. We also lost our dog 6 months after the hurricane hit us. And so disruption can come in layers, number one. Number two, always so important when we think about health. I always like to remind people, even though I own gyms for 12 years, physical is only one component of our health. So having that morning routine, having that calming, having that journaling, having that hot tub, all of those pieces are self-care that affects our whole body and prepares us to deal with our career and our finances and everything else, other areas of our health, because we've first done some self-care. So I think that's so important. What I like to think about next is how did you stay happy or find humor in the midst of a challenge? Where did you find laughter and humor and happiness?
Oh my gosh. Well, a lot of laughter was provided just by when I finally was ready to start dating. Um, that was really funny. And I was dating men and women. So, like, seeing the difference between that was also a big source of comedy for me because the women that I would date, like when you would text people and you would share little bits about your lives, they would share self improvement like things. So they like, this is the curtain rod I put up today. Here are the vegetables from my garden. Whereas the guys would send like, here's me sweaty after a workout with no shirt. And it was just like, it was so so weird. There was no in between. And so dealing with that and having other single friends that I could kind of go through it with, that was fun. Hanging out, like there was a friend of mine that I helped come out 20 years ago. And so when I got divorced, I was like, okay, now you have to take me to all the lesbian bars and like, we have to go do our queer things together. And so, there were little things like, hey, let's go to my sister's room. And she's like, honey, at our age now, it's called my granddaughter's room. And I was like, oh, gotcha. Um, so, so that was it. And I think also too, the flip side of grief is joy. And so there are moments of joy, even in grief. Like I can't think of one funeral I went to where there wasn't a moment where we almost got the giggles in some awful, inappropriate moment because of something that struck us as funny.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like when you're in the midst of it, it can be easy to let the enormity of the grief or the loss wash over you and color everything you see, but hold on to those little patches of light, those little weird things that strike you as funny.
And being able to laugh at yourself, and humor is
Yeah.
healing. And one of my sisters was single a few years ago, and so I don't know any of the dating apps. I've been with my husband 30 years, and but Tinder or something, and you swipe left or right. And we went to a park, and at the time, Pokemon Go or something was, and so this people walked up to us and they're like, "Are you playing the game?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, where'd you find the Pokemon?" Or some, I don't know, some game that you walked around and did. And I'm like, oh no, we're playing the Tinder game. And my sister's like, it's not a game, it's people's life. But to me, it seems so funny because I had never done that. And so I'm like, if you can find humor at yourself and at other people rather than getting like, oh, that's so frustrating, and just let down and laugh. So, Kristi, I'm wondering about lessons. What have you learned over the last year through this journey? What are some of the lessons that you've learned through the disruption that it sounds like you chose or initiated? Doesn't mean it's easy. But what are some of the lessons? Because we know there's listeners that are going through a decision to stay or go from their marriage, from their job, from friendship, and they're saying, what's the right thing for me? So what are some lessons you could pour into our listeners today and just share with them?
Yeah, I would say when you take the leap, don't look back.
Mm-hmm.
Once you take the leap, now you're into something new. There's no point in wasting any time on the woulda, shoulda, couldas. Like you can't. It's time to now this is your path. So keep moving forward. When there's something that you really care about that you want to get done, whether it is starting a new business or writing a book, it's something that you need to show up for every day.
Yeah.
And the way you show up for it does not have to be huge every day. Sometimes it may just be you thinking about it while you're taking a walk or making a phone call or filing that piece of paper, whatever you have to do, but you show up for it every day if you care about it. And that's how you get it done without it overwhelming you.
Nice. I have a friend that's newly single, and she was saying, my husband would never let me move. And she said, I hate to think about like that he's not here now, but she goes, now I can go, I can live anywhere, I can do it. So opening up to who you are, which you kind of talked about, rediscovering. How are you using what you've learned, Kristi, to help other people going through a similar transition or the same transition?
Yeah, so I started Truly Kristi as my Tikkun Olam project, which is in the Jewish faith, we feel like, you should be a mensch, right? Be good to people, treat them with compassion and love. And then you should do your part to repair the world. And so with Truly Kristi, I have a newsletter that I send out, and every week I have a different message on lessons that I've learned and things that can help people get out of the situations that they feel stuck in.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go to KristiCasey.com, and that's how you spell my name down there, you can read more about it. You can read some sample blogs. You can see that. I also help companies get unstuck. And so there are a lot of companies that have, through this kind of fear of change and by holding on to things too tightly, have an image or a situation that now they're seen as a certain way in the marketplace that they don't like. And so I help companies unstick themselves from those moorings, and through the use of content and community engagement, like create different ways of being.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of pay that forward. And then I think also too, that lessons that I learn show up in the novels that I write. So Song of Lyran is the first one that's out. Neuronet is coming out soon. And those tell the story of, like Margaret Atwood says, you write about what you want to learn about.
That's
And
right.
so that's another way in which I kind of give back and share.
Love that. I always say we teach what we need to learn, because people say you don't do it all perfectly. I'm like, absolutely not. Super messy and complicated, a work in progress every day. But I do also teach about what I want to learn. And so you and I talk about some similar stuff with organizations and individuals. So I talk about people get stuck, they swim, they survive, but I didn't want any of that. I want really to soar above the circumstance that we're facing. So that's what I want to know, Kristi, is how do you teach and show people, not only first yourself, but other people, how to soar above, is how I think of it, is like, don't just spin, but soar. What does that look like beyond surviving?
So I think what that looks like is, that looks like in listening to yourself and your body. And there's more wisdom within than your mind can think your way out of. Your mind is always going to try to keep you safe. And so there's a lot of conditioning that you get just societally. There's a lot of conditioning you get from your family there. And that's where the fear comes from. But there are teams of researchers that have discovered autonomous nervous systems in your heart and in your gut that have the power to overrule actions that your brain have commanded. And so you are at peace and you feel truly centered when your heart and your mind and your gut are all in alignment. So if you feel anxious, then something's out of alignment. That cognitive dissonance is coming because you're not listening to your intuition or to your gut or to your heart. So just take a moment to center yourself, and and just free writing, like getting it on paper. If you need to, burning the paper, if it's stuff that you want to get rid of and you don't want to hang on to, but just find a way in which you check in with yourself every day so you know what your center is. And that grounds you and that keeps you from being blown away or tempest tossed or whatever. You need to learn how to dig yourself more than anyone else. And that's going to help see you through.
Yeah. So as we kind of wind down here, is there one message? So if we have a listener right now and they really are feeling like they're going through a disruption, whether that's professionally or personally, is there one last thought you want to leave them with? You want to tell them to just encourage them on their journey?
Yeah, you don't have to do it alone. And if you have been isolated and you don't have friends that are in your immediate circle, it's never too late to start a hobby or do something that puts you in the path of other people. But I think that when you're ready for the lesson, the answer comes to you. So just be centered in yourself, learn to love even your ugly bits until you stop judging them. And that's where your core of strength is going to come from. And that wisdom is going to lead you. So yeah, look externally until you feel confident that you can lead internally.
Yeah, I like, I don't call them ugly, but I call it embrace your messy part. So I like that. And I live in the Villages temporarily, but it's a 55 plus massive community of 180,000 people. But one of the greatest things about it is everybody's moving here open to new friends. So I love that reminder of like some people like, well, am I too old or my kids are grown up? No, you're never too old. And there's clubs, and join them and put yourself out there. It might be hard and scary, but you can do it. So Kristi, I know people are going to want to reach out because we kind of had to make this short. What's the one best way for people to find you, to connect with you, to ask you more questions and learn more about you? What's the best place to find you?
Yeah, I start at kristicasey.com. And from there, there's a contact form that we can get in touch. I'm on social medias at Truly Kristi. And I would love to see you. Yeah. I mean, let me know what's going on with you. And I love, seeing pictures and hearing stories and just more than anything like that, I love to help. So
awesome. Well, thank you for being here today. Thank you for listening to H3 TV, where we meet every week and we help you navigate through the disruptions of life with hope, health, and happiness. We hope to see you next week. And thanks again for tuning in. Feel free to ask any questions or write comments on social media. We will respond to everyone. Thanks. Have a great afternoon.